know when. Okay. All right. If everybody is ready to go, we're gonna do our best here to work with the technology. So we're excited about, you know, as much as we love having everybody here in person, and we'll get to see a lot of you here throughout the year. We definitely wanted to try to utilize this new tool that we have with the WebEx, and obviously for practical reasons, try to cut down our costs and then add some meetings that we already have throughout the year that we think are actually more productive in terms of having you here in person than going over this orientation overview. So Edgar Zazueta, Senior Director of Government Relations here at ACSA, and on the line, he's going to do the majority of the talking. He's not going to be on camera, apologies there, but he is going to walk us through the majority of the presentation. So I'm going to hand it to him first to kind of give the introductory comments, and then I'll go forth and kind of.
Okay, thank you, Edgar. A couple things here is if you have questions during when I'm talking or when anyone's talking, hopefully you can see the chat box on your WebEx screen, and feel free to type in any questions or comments as we go. Edgar and I will be monitoring that. We can see it on our screens, and one or the other of us will reply to your questions. Just make sure that you set the pull-down menu to send it to all participants so that everyone can see whatever your question or comment is. So I'm sure this will be the most challenging piece of the entire process since we have about 15 people or so on the call. We're going to try and do introductions. So the good news is Edgar and I have already done ourselves, so I'm just going to sort of call off names, and when I call your name, if you're able to speak and we can hear you, unmute your phone and do a quick introduction with your name, your day job, and your interest in serving on the committee. So we'll start with Cheryl Ingham. If you can speak, Cheryl, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Cheryl. I'm at the Humboldt County Office of Education. My position is Director of Instructional Leadership. Certainly very committed to ACSA policy development and the concerns with legislation, particularly from the perspective of small rural districts. That's the advocacy hat I wear.
Very good. And you served on the committee for how long, Cheryl?
You know, I think 6 years.
Yeah,
that
one of our veterans.
Yes.
You can probably do this better than I can, so feel free to chime in at any time with suggestions.
Thank you, I will.
Eileen? Eileen,
are you able to hear me?
Is this Eileen? Yes.
Yes. Okay, thanks. I haven't tried dialing through my computer before. So I'm Eileen Brown. I'm the Director of Student Services for Santa Cruz City Schools, and I'm representing Region 10.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Gina Potter? Gina? Okay, let's go to Greg Barge.
Good morning. My name is Greg Barge. I am an elementary principal in the San Juan Unified School District. I have an increasing desire to learn more. I am new, and I also serve as VP of Ledge Action for Region 3.
Welcome, Greg. Thank you for joining the committee.
Thank you.
Yvonne?
Hi, good morning. Yvonne Carrillo, Legislative Advocate in ACSA's Governmental Relations Department.
Jose Rodriguez?
Good morning. Jose Rodriguez, VP for Ledge Action for ACSA Region 16. I'm the admin coordinator. I oversee the new administrator induction program, the Clear Administrator Credentialing Program. and I'm just excited about the advocacy on behalf of the students here in LA Unified.
Excellent. Welcome. Julia Tidball. Okay, Julia, we'll cycle back if you could figure out how to get your phone off of mute. Lisa Morris.
Hello, good morning. This is Lisa Morris, and I am a legislative associate with ACSA Governmental Relations.
So it's kind of odd having you on this call, Lisa, since you probably have put this PowerPoint together back in the past. But welcome.
Thanks.
Roxanne Olsch. Roxanne? Okay, we'll circle back and let's try Sam Goydell. Sam, are you out there? About,
Hi. Sorry. My name is Sindhu. I am the Region 2 President of the California Association of Student Councils. I know that Sam, Julia, and Nandini couldn't make the call today, so I'm going to be speaking on behalf of them, taking notes. Like I said, I'm the Region 2 President of the California Association of Student Councils, and I go to Mariloma High School, which is in the San Juan Unified School District as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us and letting us know that. Stephen Hovey. And then I just have a first name, Sue. Okay, and then I have...
Hi, this is Sue Arzola. I'm from ACSA Region 15, and I'm a principal in the Walnut Valley School District, and this is my third year on the committee.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us, Sue. As you can see, Gina is introducing herself on the chat, so if you have your chat window open, you can see Gina's introduction. Is there anybody else who we've missed? Because I have sort of ubiquitous names on my screen. They appear as call-in user and then a number. So if you can get your microphone to work and want to take a moment to introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good morning. This is George Sanchez. I represent Region 8, Silicon Valley region of California, a very wet region right now. I'm a high school principal over here for Eastside Union High School District. I'm a newbie, so this is the first time I've connected to this group, and I'm very interested in terms of the current trends going on. Especially in the laws that are coming up, bills are coming up, possibly laws. So anyway, so that's my interest in being part of this group.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. Anybody else?
Yes, good morning, Mark. Jacobs, Superintendent, Bellflower Unified School District.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Mark, we have a couple members who joined us.
Long time no see, my friend.
Absolutely.
Mark, we have a couple members who joined us in person. The pleasure of coming in the office, so we want to make sure they introduce themselves. You may have to come and use the mic.
Thank you.
You'll see them.
Jesus Jimenez, representing Region 19, prior principal of Indio Middle School in Desert Sands Unified School District.
And also Kyla Snyder, Region 19, representing the Middle Grades Council. I am also Desert Springs Middle School, Palm Springs Unified.
Thank you.
Well, I'd say we were just in the neighborhood, except Desert Sands is nowhere near Sacramento, so must be there on other business.
And now it's Fisk. They can't hear me?
No, you have to pick it up and then
No, but right now they can't hear me?
No.
What happened?
Yeah, we can. Is that Gina?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh! I got it wrong. I had the other.
Sorry, thank you.
Oh, wow, they heard a lot of stuff we were talking.
Okay, so on your screen you can see the agenda for today. So Edgar and I will be going through the orientation process, and then we'll talk a little bit about our collaboration with the Vice Presidents for Legislative Action and Ledge Action Day, and we'll try and have this all wrapped up by 11:30 at the latest. So, Christy, if you want to move to slide 3, you can see our dates for our remaining meetings this year. 4 weeks from today, on March 24th, we'll be meeting in Sacramento, as we will on April 21st. Those will be in-person meetings in the ACSA Sacramento office. Sunday, April 2nd and Monday, April 3rd are Ledge Action Day. If you have not participated in Ledge Action Day in the past, generally things start about 2 o'clock in the afternoon with region meetings, and then there's a program later in the afternoon on Sunday the 2nd. I know for the region that I'm in, Region 17, we always go out to dinner as a region Sunday evening. And then on Monday, April 3rd, you'll be meeting in teams, usually between 3 and 5, depending on how many people you have from your region present, with legislators to talk about specific issues that ACSA wants to make sure we highlight with the members of the legislature. And then you can see our last in-person meeting, or perhaps webinar, depends, is scheduled for June 2nd. And we will make a decision about June 2nd by the April 21st meeting, so you know whether to purchase airline tickets if you need to for that particular date. You can see all the meetings start at 9:30. I know that can be a challenge for some of you coming from Southern California, so check those flight schedules. If you need to spend the night before the meeting, just check with Christy, and we'll make sure that you have the proper information to make reservations at the Citizen Hotel where ACSA has a discount. So that's kind of where we are with that. So Edgar, do you want to walk us through the government relations team?
Sure, and we'll have to do this virtually since some folks are here, some folks are on the phone. Well, at least you'll get to know these folks really well. First and foremost, I have to give a big thank you for putting this together. It's Christy St. Clair in our office who is going to be probably your biggest point of contact, and she's awesome. So she will take care of all your needs, and she's very instrumental in putting this together and keeping us organized. So she will definitely be our hub. So you will, don't ignore her emails because it's really important. So yeah, just thank you to Christy for all the work she puts in for this committee. For those of you that are new to the committee, and those of you that have been around ACSA for some time will know that there's a slight change in terms of how the Government Relations Office works. Now we've essentially divided the policy and the political end of the work. So myself, I lead the team of advocates, the folks you will be working with directly, but we work very much in collaboration with Adene Mack and Sarah Monti, who are doing the political affairs side. So staffing the VPLAs, doing our endorsements, and you'll hear a little bit more about that as Adene talks about that work and how we're collaborating with the LPC. In terms of our advocates, you heard Ivan Carrillo on the phone, and Yvonne, are you still on? If you can, maybe you could just, we're going to go through the areas of work in a second, but if anything you want to say, I'll at least lend your voice there. Yvonne, are you on?
I'm here, yes. I'll just share that my background is in the legislature before coming over to ACSA. I've worked for a few different legislators in different capacities, both in the Capitol office and in a district office as well. Very excited to be here and be part of the team, and part of this process is new to me, being that this will be my first full year legislative year with ACSA. So I'm kind of learning along the way as well when it comes to the process of the council and how positions are taken. And so I look forward to working with every one of you. I'm handling all retirement issues. I'm doing alternative ed, doing after school programs. I'm doing adult ed. So yeah, look forward to working with you all.
The other new member to our team, I'm not sure if everybody had a chance to meet her yet. She was at one of our meetings, is Kathy McBride, who joined our team late last year. She came to us from the governor's office and will be staffing one of the subcommittees as well. She's not on the line today, but wanted to make sure everybody knows that she will be working on charter issues, special ed, and an assortment of other issues that you'll see on the list. Martha Alvarez, who I know a lot of you have already gotten to know, not just through her work on budget and accountability, but obviously through the subcommittee. Martha's also on the road today. I'm not sure if she's on the line, but Martha, are you there? You're not. We'll get to know Martha as well. Laura Preston, who does all of our HR issues. She was going to be on the line. If not, she will be joining us here in a second. Laura, are you there? You'll hear from Laura as well a little bit later in the agenda. And then rounding out our team, other folks that you will interact with is Lisa Morris, who you heard from. She staffed this committee for a long time, so obviously very knowledgeable on the logistics and on the process, and she'll definitely be there to help us out. Jason Henderson on our team as well, you will interact with as part of our team, and you will hear from Audrey and Sarah moving forward. I think we were going to move to the introduction of the student representatives. Mark, if I know we have one of them on the line.
So
maybe a little bit of history of how they got to our committee, I think would be good.
Yeah. One of the real strengths of the Ledge Policy Committee is we, in many ways, represent the student voice in our work. We have representatives from the California Association of Student Council at the Ledge Policy meetings. They participate in the subcommittees. For those of you who were with us at the summit in November when we met for the first time to work on the Ledge platform, and then were able to attend the Leadership Assembly at the end of January, you know that when I presented the Ledge platform that I acknowledged that many of the voices or the loud voice in the room was some of the students who were there from CASC and their passion for making sure that in some ways ACSA not only talks the talk but walks the walk. And so you see that reflected directly in the Ledge platform, which we'll get to in a few minutes. So whichever member of CASC we have on the line, if you could reintroduce yourself again and just give us a little bit of background about CASC and how they work and how you came to be working with us on the committee, that'd be great.
All right, so hi, again, my name is Sindhu. I'm speaking on behalf of our state president, Nandini Patel, as well as our education policy and governmental affairs policy directors, Sam Goydell and Julia Greensfelder. So my position on CASC is kind of a little bit more distance from the legislative aspect. I am responsible for overseeing Region 2, which for CASC is the Sacramento area. And so like I'm responsible for ensuring the student voice is being heard in my area. But as far as the history of CASC, we were established in the 1940s, and we've been working since then with the help of students to ensure that student voice is being heard in every aspect of our education system, whether that be at a local student board level or at a more governmental-wide level. So I'm here to take notes, record the meeting, and fill in the positions whose jobs are more directly related to the Ledge platform and things like that. And so I hope I'll be able to contribute some aspects of what we believe student voice looks like at a governmental-wide level.
Perfect. Thank you again, and I can't reiterate again how much we appreciate CAS's participation on our committee.
Thank you.
Let's move forward to the next slide, Christy. I wanted to take a moment, some of you may have seen in EdCal within the last couple of issues that ACSA has come up with a new mission statement. And I wanted to read that as sort of starting our orientation part of the meeting, just to kind of set the lens for the work that we'll be doing. So the mission statement for ACSA says, the mission of the Association of California School Administrators, the driving force of education in California and beyond, is to ensure the creation of communities of learning and teaching that serve both the aspirations of individual students and the greater good of society through this unique and indispensable coalition distinguished by bold and authoritative advocacy, dedication to the highest personal and professional ethics, inspirational networks of discovery and sharing of knowledge, mutual commitment to excellence, and university accessibility to learning. So I think that does a really nice job of sort of setting the tone for the work that we'll be doing over the next several months. So let's move forward to slide 6, Christy. So the committee itself has several tasks that are identified. The first one is to take a look at the critical pieces of legislation that affect education. If you are new to the committee, you'll quickly learn that the legislature is always prolific in the number of bills that they submit each session, well above 1,000 each session, and probably 40 to 50% of those bills touch education in some way or another. And so the government relations team spends a lot of time sorting through all those pieces of legislation and culling out the ones that the subcommittees need to talk about at our in-person meetings and help ACSA come to a position on. There are always interesting, some people might use the word scary, pieces of legislation that come down. Many members of the legislation, their experience with education is that they went to school, and somehow that's enough to write bills to tell us how to run different aspects of the educational process. So the team, the government relations team, spends thousands and thousands of hours going through all these pieces of legislation. In addition, ACSA is really, under Edgar's leadership, taking a much more proactive approach to sponsoring legislation that will further the mission of ACSA, rather than being reactive to individual pieces of legislation, which is an important role of the committee. Equally as important is finding members of the legislature to carry a bill that furthers ACSA's mission in one way or another. And Edgar's really kind of revised that process, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the ONEVOICE legislative platform. We'll be talking in a few moments about the positions that we take, and you'll see that we completed the Ledge platform in January, and the Leadership Assembly adopted that Ledge platform. We do that every other year as the new session of the legislature starts. So, Christy, you can go ahead and move forward now. So the committee itself is made up, it's a large committee, which is good. It's a diverse committee, which is really good. There's a chair. There's one member from each region, so that's 19 additional members. There's one member from each job-alike committee or council, so that's 20 more individuals. There's a representative from ACSA board on the committee, so that's another individual. And then we have the government relations team that's there. I remember when I first started on the committee, one of the very first meetings I went to, I don't remember what the legislation was, but I was responding in my role as a director for math and science for Irvine School District, a suburban high-performing district. And one of the other committee members was actually a superintendent/principal in a small school district in the northern part of the state. And the difference in perspective about how this particular piece of legislation affected a small, geographically spread out school district compared to a suburban school district was really very interesting. And it's that diversity that causes us to have such a wide-ranging committee with so many members who participate. And I think that at the core of it is really the absolute strength of this committee. But with having that many members, it's also imperative that the members of the committee prepare themselves before they arrive in Sacramento. You will be getting from Christy about a week before the committee meetings a link to the Google Drive that'll have all the bills your particular subcommittee will be looking at. And as best you can, part of your job is to gather input from your region or the committee or council that you're representing so that you come prepared to help the legislative advocate understand what the field is saying about these proposed pieces of legislation. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but it's not easy to do that, particularly, you know, I represented Orange County for quite a while, Region 17. With 28 school districts, trying to find the right person who can offer opinions is sometimes difficult. It's not always, you're not always able to schedule an in-person meeting at the region or committee level at the same time where we're gathering input on individual pieces of legislation. So email is a good friend of yours in terms of trying to send out the pertinent information and try to gather feedback. Christy, move forward to slide 8. So because we count so much on the diverse views of the members of our committee, it's really imperative that you attend all the meetings. Now, we all know that stuff happens. So if you know that your day job, and this probably covers everybody on the committee, is subject to a lot of last-minute issues that arise that could impact your ability to attend the meeting, you might want to start finding an alternate now so that they have the dates on the calendar. We really value the feedback from the regions and the committees and councils. So that alternate must be a current active member of your region or committee or council, and they should prepare for the meeting the same way that you would prepare for the meeting. And so if that happens, feel free to send to the alternate the link to the Google Drive so they can get in and see the bills that your subcommittee will be looking at. They're always welcome to reach out to me or to Christy for specific questions. If it's an alternate and they've never participated before, we can kind of give them a condensed version of what's going to happen when they're there. One of the things, if you're new to the committee, you'll find is that the subcommittees are very active in terms of members participating and sharing their thoughts and views about the individual pieces of legislation, and that's good. This is not a committee where we have a lot of people who are just sitting back and sort of watching what's going on. There's a lot of very active participation. There's also an orientation packet that the government relations team has put together. It's a long document, it's about 50 pages. So while we've talked a little bit about committee responsibilities here, and we'll on the next slide, the committee responsibilities are better defined on page 5 of that orientation packet. So you might want to take a look at that when you have a moment. So once the committee meeting is finished, Christy will post within a week or so all the positions that were taken on all the pieces of legislation for each of the subcommittees. And you should have a way to report back to your committee or council these positions. Nothing is cast in concrete. So if there's something that comes out that there's amendments to the bill or further input from the field comes in, you know, just let the government relations team through Christy know that, and it's not unusual for us to bring back the same piece of legislation at multiple meetings of the committee so that we can update the position and change it if need be. You'll get a lot of emails from government relations, and in the avalanche of emails that are part of everybody's life, just kind of look for those and see if there's something that is being asked of you in terms of response, and if so, please respond to those. And then finally, I know for Region 17 I'll be participating in Ledge Action Day. Whether you're representing a region or a committee or council, we really expect that you will participate in Ledge Action Day. It's part of the role of this committee. And so you should contact, if you haven't already taken care of this, contact the Vice President for Legislative Action in your region and work with them to make sure that you have all the particulars. I know for those of us from Southern California, those particulars include, making a reservation at the Sheraton Hotel by the Convention Center for Sunday night, airline reservations, all of those kinds of things. I've done it several years, and it's always a very interesting experience and a day well spent, even with the 2 days of work that it will take to catch up for the day that you miss. Christy, let's go forward to slide 10. As I mentioned, Christy will be sending the analysis of each of the bills and an agenda via email 1 week before the meeting. They're on the Google Drive, as will this PowerPoint and the orientation packet that I mentioned. Don't know what that was. So again, as I talk about, review the analyses. Now, on some of the bills, you will see a position already listed. That means what happens before the committee meets is the government relation teams meets and goes through the bills that are being offered for conversation at the committee. And some of those bills, there's a suggested position. In other times, it will say seek input. If there is a position listed there, that doesn't mean that's the final decision. It's just to guide the discussion at the subcommittee level. So don't be dismayed if you're looking at a particular piece of legislation and the suggested position is different than what you think the position ought to be. Gather input from your region or committee council and bring that feedback to the meeting of the Ledge Policy Committee, and depending on how the conversation goes at the subcommittee level, that position can be easily modified and based on feedback from the field. So I'm going to pause for a moment, and there are several people on the phone who have participated in the committee before. If you have input for the new members of the committee about how to best prepare and work with their region or committee or council, if you wouldn't mind sharing that, I'll just pause for a moment and give you the floor here. Okay, again, if you have any questions about that, if you want to just use the chat, if you're having trouble with the microphone on your phone or whatever, just please go ahead and do so, but we're going to move forward here. Let's move to slide 11. So as I've mentioned, the Legislative Policy Committee is divided into 3 subcommittees. Each subcommittee is chaired by 1 or 2 members of the Legislative Advocacy Team, Relations team, and next week you'll get an email from Christy asking you to choose a subcommittee based on either your own personal preference if you're representing a region, or if you're representing a committee or council, how best to it would correspond with their interests. So if you would make sure you look for that email from Christy and respond with the subcommittee, that way we have it in the right place. And if you, Christy, if you move forward to the next slide, slide 12, these are the list of the 3 subcommittees. So you can see that subcommittee number 1 is chaired by Martha Alvarez. And you can see the areas there that subcommittee tackled. Subcommittee 2 is chaired by Laura Preston. Yeah. And you can see the areas that she is responsible for. And subcommittee 3, co-chaired by Yvonne and Kathy, a long list. Let Christy know which 3 subcommittees you want to sit on and participate.
Mark, if I could add one thing there, if you don't mind. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead,
Excuse me, 1 second. Whoever just is on the call, can you please mute your computers?
Yeah, we have a lot of background noise here. Well, if they're on mute, they're probably not going to hear us, so,
Sure. Well, I'll start with that. The reflection that I got back from the meeting was basically they thought people took it well. They had some questions. There was an expectation maybe that there would be, as an example, Katie didn't say anything. That was one of the things I heard her say very little, and they expect.
You may have to mute all of us.
Well, that helps, and so I think as they start seeing the reality of the dynamic, then I think more questions will come from. I want to kind of start giving, especially this candidate,
Steve Harvey, we can't hear you. I can't hear you anymore.
Where this will take you to my main concern, which is never really left.
People were trying to clean up the background noise here. Hang on.
I'm mostly concerned.
Yeah, I'm going to mute Edgar and Mark.
Can you hear us?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, I muted everybody. I'm going to unmuted you, and I'm going to unmute Edgar.
Okay, and Edgar was going to say something, right?
Yeah, so now the 2 of them and everyone else is muted.
I think that should work. You guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and thank you everybody for bearing with us with the technology. Obviously, having everybody mute and whatnot, but we'll get this. So, thank you for your patience. Yeah, the one thing I was just going to add to what Mark was saying with the subcommittees, we want to be very mindful of your time. And Mark's going to get into signing up to the subcommittees. And you could tell we have 4 advocates, but we have them broken up into 3. What we noticed last year is that there was, towards those last meetings later in the year, there was after the legislative process takes its course and some of the bills go away, we still want to make sure that we're going to take your guys' time. We want to make it very meaningful. So one heads up, we may ask you to do 1 or 2 things. One is collapse some of those subcommittees at the end. If there's too many bills, we'll break them apart. If there's not enough, we may ask the committees to come together. So just your flexibility on that end. So don't feel like if you sign up for one particular committee, that's the only issues you're going to look at. And, through one thing that Mark helped us with last year too is utilizing the full committee. These bills that transcend the one issue area, we're trying to be more mindful of bringing those to the whole group, or those bills that rise to the attention of this is a huge issue that impacts everyone. We will try to use the whole committee to take those actions.
Thank you, Edgar. So I want to just underscore for all the members of the committee, the legislative advocates are very knowledgeable experts about the legislative process and how to get the input that the members of each subcommittee share with them into the actual legislation. But with that willingness to listen to us comes the responsibility for each of us to remember that we're the experts and we are representing either a region, a committee, or a council, and not just yourself. And so that's why reaching out ahead of the committee meetings is so important, that you get input from others as best you can. So, Christy, let's go forward to the next slide. And we're going to talk a little bit about the positions that the bills that we take. Now, as I mentioned, each legislative advocate has hundreds, literally hundreds of bills, and depending on the positions that the committee takes, there's only so many hours in a day that they can actually work on these pieces of legislation. So there are active positions, and these are fairly self-explanatory, and in the orientation manual, this is on page 10 in greater detail. So the active positions are support, oppose, support if amended, oppose unless amended, and seek to amend. All of those positions mean that the legislative advocate is going to be dealing directly with the author of that piece of legislation and their staff to make the changes that we want, unless it's a support position. A support position, usually the member of the legislature is thrilled that we're supporting their bill and a letter or whatever to suffice, but then they may ask the legislative advocate to do some work on their behalf. So it kind of is a two-way street. So all of those positions require some level of action by the lobbyists. So if we were to go through and if a subcommittee is reviewing 30 bills and in all 30 bills we're taking some sort of active position, that's creating a real problem and challenge for the legislative advocate to give each of those bills the attention that they deserve. So I'm not saying don't take those positions, take the positions that are appropriate. And on the other side of the coin, it's very important that the subcommittee take a position on each bill. I know that sometimes it's easy to default to, well, we'd like to have more information. We'd like to understand better what the author of this particular piece of legislation means by, and then some element of the bill. Those are all appropriate comments to share with the advocate, but at the end of the day, you need to take a position. And just as taking active positions on every bill is not recommended, taking the passive watch or neutral is also not appropriate on every piece of legislation, because once the committee meets for the next month or so, the legislative advocate is working over in the Capitol with the members of the legislature and their staff. And if the position the committee's taken is watch and something happens and there's a whole bunch of these watch things, that's equally as challenging for the advocate. So please make sure your committee is taking positions on every bill and they're being taken with a mind towards what's the priority for the legislative advocate. As you receive these bill packets to review prior to the meeting, you'll see they'll be split. There'll be the ones, much like a school board agenda, that are just consent. This may be 1, 2, 3, maybe up to 7 or 8 bills that in the opinion of the legislative advocate, they're pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of conversation that needs to happen, and they are voted on by the committee in terms of they'll all have suggested positions, and what the subcommittee is doing is ratifying those suggested positions. Just like at the school board meeting, if there's an item or more, one or more items on that consent agenda that you want to pull off and discuss, that's the job of the subcommittee. So don't be shy about doing that. Whatever's left on the consent agenda after all the conversations, there's one vote to ratify the position suggested by the legislative advocate, pending whatever changes might have been made or not. And then the individual pieces of legislation in the other packet for your subcommittee, you'll be taking a position on each one of those individual bills. So I'm going to pause there before we talk about ledge action. And Edgar, is there anything you need to add about that I left out? Or Christy, if there's anything I left out?
No, I think we're good. I'll be sending out the subcommittee, the request for subcommittee assignments next week.
Okay. All right, then let's move forward to talking about our collaborations with the VP for ledge action. And I see Adne on the screen, so jump in whenever appropriate. Get Christy to unmute you first.
Get Christy to unmute me first.
So,
am I? Okay.
The VPs for ledge action, yes, I can hear you, Adne. The VPs for ledge action there's one for each of the 19 regions in ACSA. They have a monumental job and one that culminates with Ledge Action Day this year on April 2nd and 3rd. So what they're doing right now is putting together the team for their region that will be coming to Sacramento on April 2nd and 3rd, getting all the logistics worked out, working with members of the legislature, those individual offices that are served in that region, and making appointments with either the legislature or a member of their staff. In addition to all that work, as if that wasn't enough, in particularly like last year that was an election year, they're out interviewing potential candidates to help ACSA with the endorsement process. They're helping ACSA come to positions on ballot measures. And really, under Adne's leadership, there's been a strong effort the last couple of years to make Legislative Action Day one day in a series of interactions with the members of the legislature, not the day of interaction with the members of the legislature. So I'll kind of stop, and Adne, if you have anything you want to add to that.
I would say that our VPLAs have done a pretty good job of really reaching out to everyone's regional and local representative. I think, Mark, you kind of covered it and capsulized everything that they're working on right now. I think a couple of years ago, we wanted to make sure that there was some recognition and some cross-discussion about the legislation that we support or the legislation that we sponsor, and how that relates to the members that we endorse, and what that strategy looks like, and how we can collaborate between the two different councils and the committees and kind of see what that looks like. And that's one reason why we have sort of some members from our VPLA committee come and sit on legislative policy and vice versa. And that's one reason why we've collaborated. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the comments. And why we collaborate between the two councils.
Yeah, and I think that has really helped us in many of the same ways that the combination of the ONEVOICE initiative and the Ledge platform, bringing those together, making sure that the VPs for Ledge Action Day, and Ledge Policy Committee are all in sync with the most important pieces of legislation. Adne, do you want to talk a little bit about the PAC? Christy, if you want to go forward to slide 16.
Yeah, so we have two PACs. We have one that's dedicated to candidates and one that's dedicated to issues.
and that's kind of what the names of them are. So with our candidate pack, that is for really helping the candidate themselves. So we can provide a contribution directly to candidates. That limit is right around, I want to say $8,500, $8,700 per candidate. We can max out at that. For some candidates that we work with, quite well with, we give them the maximum contribution. Others, we have a tendency not to give them that much money. And that helps them with, whatever their campaign costs are. We use that often. Like, for example, I probably get 3 or 4 calls a day regarding fundraisers as members of the legislature are preparing for 2018 elections and sort of trying to get ahead of that and building the coffers. There'll be some members of the legislature that have really tight races, and others, they probably won't even have an opponent. But they're all prepping for their 2018 election. So we go to a lot of fundraisers. It's one of the many activities that we use to develop a stronger relationship because often money talks. Our issues pack is what we use for a variety of different things. So part of our issues pack we use to support ballot initiatives. So Prop 55, Prop 51, Prop 58, those were all the initiatives that we supported this past election. Thankfully, they all passed. Oftentimes, we'll use it also to fight an initiative that maybe we don't like. And we may support the opposition to any initiative. And so we've done that in the past. We also can use our issues pack to support an expenditure that is independent of any other campaign or candidate that's running for office. So for example, in 2010 was it, I believe, we ran Larry Estefis for State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Well, what we did is we used our issues pack as a independent expenditure to support Larry's candidacy. So we didn't talk to Larry about his campaign, but we ran flyers or ads or the like to support his candidacy. And that's something that we're looking to do in the future, where we may support a senator or an assembly member in their race that may be very contested, and we may choose a candidate and then run some mailers or a commercial or a radio ad to support the candidate. That's what our issues pack is for. We also support a variety of different activities that help students, whether it's CASC or Black Student Union or the Ethnic Caucuses Leadership Institutes in the Capitol. We support those. All things help students, and we use our resources to help students that way also. And so in the future, we need everyone to contribute to our PAC so that we can either have maybe an ACSA member run for office, or we can help a candidate that's running for the governor's office like we'll have next year. We need our resources to make sure that we can be politically active and ensure that we have folks in the Capitol building that can represent our interests. And if you want to donate to our PAC, you can go to ACSA.org/donate to donate to our PAC. Next slide, Christy. Mark, I thought I'd talk about sort of the liaisons between the two committees.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
And so we do have two committees. We have 4 liaisons that will go to some of the ledge policy committees that are the VPLAs. And so from Region 19, we have Jennifer Cavarucci. From Region 7, we have Tiara Carruthers. And then from Region 9, we have Teresa Placencia. And then, of course, we have our VPLA, Linda Kamitsky, who is the chair of all the VPLAs. They will likely come I think, every meeting, and then the other, Jennifer will come every meeting if she can, and then the others are backups. I'm sorry, Jen, you're in Region 18, my bad. I wrote that wrong when I gave it to Christy. Region 18 is Jennifer. She will come to every Ledge Policy Committee if she can, and then the others will be her backups if she can't come, because I know that there's some dates that she couldn't attend. But the idea is that we have some coordination between Ledge Policy and the VPLAs. So when we're talking about legislation, our folks that are talking about legislation know which people that we have endorsed, which members we're focusing on, which members are, chairs of committees, or which members might have a tough re-election campaign, but they've been really good members for us, who's part of the moderate caucus and the rationale why we're supporting them. We want to make sure that there's an understanding of who we endorse as it relates to the legislation that we support or that we sponsor. And then Stephen Hovey from Region 19 is the representative from LPC that comes to the VPLA meetings. And so that he can also report back to make sure that he understands the political conversation that we're having in our meeting and can relay that information back to Ledge Policy. And I think that that is sort of a general synopsis of why we have them working together.
Yeah, thank you, Adnai. That was very helpful. So again, just as a reminder, if you have any questions or comments, don't forget to use the chat. Just make sure you're on the all participants on the pull-down menu. Edgar, do you want to take ONEVOICE, the Ledge platform? You want me to do that? How do you want to move forward on that?
Hey, Mark, why don't you spearhead that, and I'll sort of tag team with you as we go along.
So one of the tasks for the Ledge Policy Committee is, at the beginning of the legislative session, we're tasked with developing ACSA's legislative platform. The committee does that work. It then goes through revisions, ultimately goes to Leadership Assembly for ratification, which happened in January, and then finally to ACSA's Board of Directors for approval. Several years ago, it started with the superintendents. There was an initiative called ONEVOICE for Students, and it had its own legislative priorities in it, some of which were reflected in the Ledge platform at the time and some of which were not. And then you had Ledge Action Day, which prior to the coordination that Adnai just talked about was sort of a third spoke here also with their own initiatives that we worked on at Ledge Action Day. So when Edgar assumed the directorship for government relations, one of the things that we talked about was trying to make the Ledge platform a document that the Legislative Policy Committee actually can use in helping determine positions on legislation. For example, last year we had some attempts by members of the legislature to take one-time money and use it for a particular piece of the educational process that they thought was important. You might remember we used to have those, and they were called categoricals. Governor Brown has been consistent with his lack of interest in going back to the categorical world, which is a good thing. But as Adnai points out, he's termed out next year, and so you're beginning to see members of the legislature sort of put up some of these trial balloons. At the same time, ACSA's had a position for many, many years, certainly long before local control funding formula, about local control. But at the same time, when Common Core first came out, ACSA also lobbied heavily for one-time money for Common Core implementation. So you have these sort of big issues that come up, and that should be the role of the legislative platform, is to provide guidance for a legislative policy committee in taking positions. And then, of course, there's always the political overlay of who's the author of this particular piece of legislation, what is that individual's relationship to the leadership of the legislature. You know, frankly, we're potentially going to treat legislation from the President Pro Tem of the State Senate or the Speaker of the Assembly differently than we might just a member. And that's just the political reality. So we worked long and hard to try and combine all of these different voices about advocacy into one document. For those of you who've seen the previous iterations of the LEDGE platform, it truly was a laundry list of sometimes very small-grained sized issues that defined ACSA's position in sort of very black and white terms. The genesis for that laundry list came from a survey, and knowledgeable members of ACSA knew that if they could get enough people to respond with that individual issue, it was going to make the final list. What we tried to do this time was go up a few levels and say, what are the guiding principles that should guide our work around legislation? And then in broader strokes, what are the 5 areas that are important for ACSA to concentrate on in terms of its work on legislation? So the guiding principles, there are 3. They are access, equity, and local control. And then the 5 priority areas are accountability, school finance, educator effectiveness and pipeline, special ed, and student needs. And so that's really the focus of the LEDGE platform. The goal, of course, and you know, if you've worked in schools for any length of time, you know that there are a myriad of notebooks or documents that get written with a lot of time and effort invested into it and then sit on a shelf until the next time it comes around for the revision. We're really trying to make the revisions we've made with the legislative platform have that document become a more living, usable document in the work of the LEDGE platform. Many of you may have been involved in that at our November meeting at the summit, and then there was a working group that took that input and put together a draft, and then they went through revisions and then ultimately to the Leadership Assembly in January. So it is on pages 12 through 14 of the orientation manual, and if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend you take a look at it before our March meeting.
Mark, if I could add one thing, you guys could hear me now, right? Yeah, no, you did a wonderful job of just summarizing both the process and kind of our fundamental thinking behind it. The one thing we keep reminding folks, and I think it's worth underscoring again, we went through a long process to look at what are the most timely issues that, really require our attention and our priorities, in this upcoming session. And you heard Mark talk about those 5 areas. By no means, and this will become very apparent to you folks, by no means are those the only areas that we're going to work on. That our team is obviously going to be responsive to whatever the issue of the day is. And there's no doubt that by the end of this legislative session, we'll be talking about and confronting issues that we didn't foresee right now here in February of this year. So it's just really our focus. The whole idea was try to be nimble. What happens in the past, even if we had a list of 55 topics, chances are we were going to forget something, and people would let us know that. So we thought really coming at it from this broader perspective, giving the team the flexibility to really look at what issues do we really need to take on behalf of our membership. But if you could really help us, you being our really the work is driven from you folks to help us communicate that when you're talking to the membership in your respective regions or, you know, anywhere else, that we will take on those issues that our members bring to our attention, and that this as Mark said, this document is really intended to be a living document that will adapt at the mid-year point or throughout this whole process.
Thank you, Edgar. So our last topic for the day is legislative update. Christy, you want to move to the next slide and then the slide after that? Edgar, are you going to talk about this a little bit?
Did we lose you?
So while we're trying to figure out why Edgar has gone mute, as you can see on the screen, each of the advocates took a stab at knowing the legislature, knowing the members of the legislature, knowing the kinds of conversations that are going on at the Capitol, what are the likely hot topics in each of the areas. So again, as you get the email from Christy next week about the subcommittees, this also may have some influence on you about which subcommittee you might choose to participate on. I'm not going to read this to you, but you can see the kind of hot topic issues that each of the advocates have identified as probable areas of potential legislation during this year.
I think I'm back on, Mark, if you guys could hear me.
There you go. Yep, you're on.
Sorry about that. Yeah, as you can see, and we won't go over all, you know, in detail of those topics. I will open it up in a second. If Yvonne or Laura or anybody else on the team wants to highlight anything, we'll go ahead and do that. I think the thing I would just underscore here is, as every year, the issue that our folks talk to us the most about, the issue that's always at the forefront, every year becomes the biggest issue of the year, is budget. The finances, right? The whole issue of just getting enough resources to fund the services, to do the work that you folks do at your respective schools or districts. So that obviously will always be our priority. As we've been telling our membership, as you probably read through all of our reports and updates, this year is the change. While the economy is still relatively positive and we're still getting new money into the system, for the first year, that faucet has slowed down. And the amount of new money that we're getting into the system has been reduced. We still are getting new dollars, but that it's not at the same rate that we have in previous years. With that, we keep going. We keep seeing the obligations that are, you know, that are pressing on our members in their capacities, whether it be from the district level, the impact of pension obligations, the minimum wage. Not to mention all of the requirements with the new accountability system. The trend is that our members are being asked to do more and more with less resources. So that, like always, will be a pressing issue for us. Just like with our platform, we have to look at the implementation of this new accountability system. And that really has been a process that's been driven from the State Board of Education, but there is obviously implications with the LCAP, with any statutory requirements that may come. One thing that we're realizing is that the legislature may want to take a more active role on that development of the accountability system and not yield all that authority to the State Board of Education. So that will be another issue that we will obviously have to look out for. On the issue of HR, and I think Laura may be on the phone, so I will only say a piece, and then I'll let her chime in. You are, Laura? Yeah. Okay, so you could talk a little bit about the HR landscape.
Oh, the HR landscape? Yes. So as probably was mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of bills introduced, and we're still going through them and finding out what's out there. But so far, we do know that Assemblymember Walker has introduced a bill, what we call a SPOT bill, on extending the probationary period, we'll be working with her to find some solution to extension of, extending the probationary period for new teachers to something. ACSA has consistently been pushing for 3 years. Her bill is a little bit nebulous at right now, but we'll be working with her. There's also the orientation bill. Many of you remember that from last year, that the unions are pushing, public employee unions are pushing for requiring all public employers to provide orientation to all new employees. Our concern in the past, you might recall, was that it was very prescriptive in nature. And we are working with the governor's office now trying to find a compromise if we can. The reason that we say in a compromise, last time we just fought it all out and were able to push back on it. Now with a new president and a new Supreme Court justice on the horizon, there are already 2 cases moving through the courts, one in California and one in Michigan. We're calling it Friedrichs 2, to look at the whole issue of whether employees are required to pay their union dues or not. And it's anticipated that these cases will get to the U.S. Supreme Court by the fall. And if that happens, it'll be early next year when a ruling will come out. And the thinking is that it will be on the behalf of the plaintiffs, so would push back against the unions. And as a result, of course, the unions are very concerned about that. And with this governor recognizing that this is on the horizon, all indications are that there will be a bill. We just have to make sure it's workable for us in education. And then we're going to wait and see where there's all sorts of bills coming up, again, on unemployment insurance during the summer months for classified employees. We've seen that probably 6 times. And there'll be all sorts of, workers' comp and other types of those kind of issues in HR land.
Laura, we get asked about charter schools a lot by our members. You want to just give a quick overview of kind of what our thinking is and what the landscape in that realm is?
Sure. My new colleague, Kathy McBride, will be handling the issue of charter schools going forward. It's an issue that I've had under my my portfolio for a long time. ACSA is putting together a working group, task force, I'm not sure what we're going to call it, with some of our members to talk about where ACSA is going to be in the future moving forward on charter schools. And what I mean by that is because within ACSA, we have members on all sides of the spectrum about charter schools, from those who oversee charter schools, for those who are actually running charter schools, for those who have had issues with charter schools. So we're trying to bring everybody together. It's been years since we've had a position paper on where ACSA stands, and so this is something our board of directors has asked us to do, and that will hopefully lead to potential legislative solutions that we see are needed, maybe helping with the oversight, what our members are responsible for doing for charter schools. There's a whole lot of issues out there that we're going to be having to look at. And I anticipate, and Edgar, correct me if I'm wrong, that this will probably take the rest of this year to put that work together before we have legislative proposals moving forward. And really that works out timing-wise because this governor has been unwilling, at least so far, to do anything, to sign any legislation that we have pushed, or the legislature has killed bills that the charter community has been pushing forward. So it gives us time for when there's a new administration to hopefully be very thoughtful in how we want to move forward in addressing charter school issues for our members.
Yeah, this is one piece where I would say that the perspective of our members really helped us when we were developing the LEDGE platform on charter schools. The thought was, let's really lay the groundwork and then have this have something in place for the new administration. Right,
right. If I may, I'd like to just mention the school facility on for everybody too, because I know that's of interest for a lot of people. I just met with the Department of Finance yesterday, talking to them about what they're anticipating. It looks like through the budget trailer bills will be a requirement that school districts have to include what you're going to be spending your bond money on. It will be part of the audit guide. I raised a number of issues with them that they hadn't really thought of that I think we're going to hope to get worked out, because for those of you who are familiar with facilities, you already have to do an audit that's submitted to the Office of Public School Construction, and this would be a separate audit, and there's a lot of questions that come into it as far as what audit, what if one audit says one thing and another audit says something else? How are fines paid for? you know, what is there a place to be able to go and receive, you know, to appeal? So all those things have yet to be worked out that will be part of that moving forward. The anticipation is that bonds will be sold in the fall. And the next question is how much? And so that's part of what we're going to be working on with the Department of Finance. In the January budget, I think they were talking about $300 million. There's about a $2 billion backlog for those that have been approved or on the authorized list. So we're going to push for a higher amount and see where we land. But we are, including the Department of Finance, we're all looking for a fall bond sale. So I can let you know that right now, with details to come. Are we on?
Yeah.
Another issue that I can share with you, too, and it kind of is a facility issue. There are a plethora of bills relating to water in schools this year. You know, kind of starting with the Flint, Michigan issue. It's really, there are a number of bills out there from everything from all over the map. So we'll be I'll be bringing those forward to this committee soon. There's a lot of them.
Yvonne, are you still on the line?
I am here, yeah.
Are there any things that you want to highlight for the committee?
Please. So the first that I'll highlight is rising pension obligations for school employers. And coupled with other budget pressures, we know that these costs are simply unsustainable. And what we also know is that there's a lack of understanding of this problem by the legislature, that many of these legislators were in office when pension reform was adopted. So there's going to be a big focus on one, bringing our legislators up to speed on the issue, and them understanding the real budget pressures that are being caused by these rising pension costs, but also identifying within the budget short and long-term solutions to mitigate these costs. Secondly, in regards to school discipline, a couple conversations that have begun are, one, the use of police or the presence of police on campus, on school campuses, whether or not they should be present, and secondly, if they are there, what their role should be. Also, willful defiance. There's been a bill that's been introduced to extend the prohibition on the use of willful defiance through high school. So this is going to be a really hot topic this year. And then lastly, what I'll discuss is just the whole immigration discussions, and there's been a lot of conversations within the Capitol about responding to these federal proposals and policies that are being put forth. And one of which that directly impacts schools is SB 54 by Senator De Leon, and within that bill, it would restrict schools from using their resources to support any immigration detention efforts. But there's just a broader conversation that's happening in the Capitol about how do we in California protect our undocumented populations, and so that will be monitoring very closely and be working on as well.
Thanks, Yvonne. I know Martha maybe was going to try and join remotely. Martha, are you on?
Okay. I don't think Martha's on.
Okay. All right. So I think that pretty much brings us to the end of the agenda. Christy, if you'll advance one slide. You can see Christy's contact information there if you have any questions. If you have anything for the committee right now, please use the chat function and we'll try to respond to those. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending, and we will see you March 24th, 4 weeks from today, in Sacramento at 9:30.
All right, thank you, Mark. We appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. We will see you guys. When's the next meeting? March 24th. We'll see you then. Thank you.
It's driving me crazy. It's like, I'm on my way to doing it right now.